Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon and good evening. So welcome to our December Career Development Seminar for our GloCal Fellowship Program. And today, I'm really excited to have our esteemed speaker, Dr. Ermias Kebreab. So Dr. Ermias Kebreab is Associate Dean for Global Engagement in the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, as well as Director of the World Food Center. And he's a renowned scholar and skilled administrator with extensive experience in sustainable agriculture and animal science. Dr. Kebreab oversees the advancement of the college's international goals while working in collaboration with extensive internal and external partnerships to magnify the grand challenges facing our global food system. So I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Kebreab, and hopefully we'll have some time in the end to ask some questions and have an informal discussion. So I will turn the floor over to Dr. Kebreab.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me for this seminar. So I'm pleased to share with you about how I kind of navigated through this system over the last, I don't know, 20 years or so. And so just to start at the beginning, basically it's sort of the road that took me to arrive here at UC Davis, as I was actually born in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia to Eritrean parents, and we ended up moving to Eritrea, and I did most of my middle school, high school, and university, so bachelor degree in Asmara. And then I got the opportunity to go to the UK through a World Bank fund to do a master's degree. So I did a master's degree there, and then came back to Eritrea when it became newly independent. So I didn't see any reason for me to stay in the UK anymore. So I went back. But unfortunately, things didn't go as well as I expected, as a dictatorship was being established at the time. So, you know, there is a proverb in Eritrean, in Tigrinya, that says that either do what they told you to do, or you have to leave their country. So I chose to leave the country and went back to the UK, and then went to Canada, to Guelph and Manitoba, and then finally to the United States. So just briefly, this is the university that I graduated in, a bachelor degree in biology and chemistry. So I have a biology major, chemistry minor. It's a 4-year university, and then from this is then I went to the University of Reading in the UK. I did a master's in the technology of crop protection. So slightly different from what I ended up doing or what I'm doing right now. But at the time, the choices were very limited. I was given a World Bank scholarship from the government of Ethiopia at the time. Eritrea was part of Ethiopia. I didn't really have much choice to, you know, the fund is for agriculture and in the topic of crop protection. So that's when that's why I ended up at Reading doing the master's that I did. But I was really interested working more on the animal side of things. So when I had a chance to go back and do a PhD, so I then decided to change the field, and I was doing mostly mathematical modeling of biological systems. So still crop and livestock kind of integration, and because I was basically paying for myself, so that when I went for PhD, I just went by myself. Like I had enough with the government in Eritrea, so I just decided to leave, and I went back to what I knew, which was the University of Reading. And I asked, they actually let me to enroll at the university, and they let me pay what they call the home fees, so like a third of what international students would pay, because I was paying everything by myself. So I had to find a job, as I was working at Burger King for most of the time, and then I found another job in a wine factory, sort of packing wine boxes. So those two jobs paid for at least for a year, And then I was able to get some scholarship, particularly Africa Educational Trust based in London, and the Society for Protection of Science and Learning, also based in London. They both gave me scholarships that allow me to continue through my 3 years of PhD at the University of Reading. And then went to University of Guelph. So basically, one of the reasons was that in the UK, agriculture was not really given the priority. The government basically they demoted the Minister of Agriculture into a Department of Agriculture, and the policy was that the UK was would do better in doing something else in finance and TV and stuff like that, and could import its own food. So the opportunities for agriculture was much reduced, and when this opportunity came up to do kind of a postdoc at the University of Guelph in Canada, so I jumped on it and so went to University of Guelph. While I was there, basically, I stayed there for about 3 years, and I basically started to mostly focus on publication, because by that time I already had about 2 years or so, 2-3 years at the University of Reading as a postdoc as well. So once I finished the PhD, I was hired by a professor there as a postdoc for a couple of years, and then moved to Canada. So Canada was also a postdoc, and at that time I realized that to go ahead, I have to publish. So the only thing I can I would be able to compete for jobs would be by publishing. So I just put all of my efforts on publishing. So I was able to get the Young Scientist Award from the Canadian Society of Animal Science, and also getting some experience in teaching courses. So when I was in Guelph, I was teaching or co-teaching a course on mathematical modeling of biological systems, and I was also helping with advising the PhD students and master's students as well. And also, I took a lot of I put a lot of importance on the outreach, and particularly giving oral presentations at various national and international conferences. That's really the only way that you can meet with people and exchange ideas, and people know what you do, and you get exposed to a number of people, and that actually really helped me in terms of getting to know people. And I was approached to apply for a position at the University of Manitoba while I was at the University of Guelph, and that only happened because of the publications and because of getting people to know in those conferences. But my situation was a little bit different, because by that time I had spent about 6 years or so as a postdoc. So normally people will have 2 to 3 years postdoc and then go to an assistant professor and all that. But at the time, I didn't have the opportunity to get into an assistant professor position. But this opportunity in University of Manitoba came along, and basically what they offered me was just bypass the assistant professor level and directly go to associate professor level. Because of the experience I've had, because of the publication record and all that, they were willing to consider that. And that position also was what they call the Junior Canada Research Chair. So this is a nationwide initiative where they're trying to retain Canadian scientists in Canada by sort of giving them a bit more incentive. So if you are a Canada Research Chair, you get extra salary, and you also get extra funding. So there's a funding that comes from the government. I think that at that time was about $50,000 a year to do, to spend it on any kind of research that I want to spend it. So which is really a good opportunity, because then you can get students, you can get postdocs or whatever. You don't have to worry about trying to get the funding, and that sort of helps you to get even more funding, right? So that was really helpful at the time. So I spent about 2 years or so, and then I was approached by colleagues at UC Davis, and they asked me, you know, we're looking for a person with your skill sets, and pretty much doing similar things that you are doing in Manitoba. So I thought, okay, I will apply, and I applied, and I remember my interview was in sort of towards the end of February. And when I left Winnipeg, it was about -40 at the time, -40 degrees centigrade. Well, I guess at that level, degree centigrade or Fahrenheit doesn't matter. It was extremely cold. Coming to Davis, and there's no snow, the sun is shining. I was actually able to run around the lake. So it was pretty easy decision. Once they told me that they offered me the job, it didn't take too long to come to Davis. Probably I should have negotiated my salary better, but it was an easy decision. So I then moved to Davis. But while I was at the University of Manitoba, I also continued to work on the publications. I believe that the publication is a currency and in academic setting. So I put a lot of effort into that, and a lot of grant proposals also, which was a little bit easier at the University of Manitoba because it's a small province in Canada, and the agriculture is valued. There is a lot of investment in agriculture, and a lot of the times actually the Minister of Agriculture will call or will send an email and say, we are looking into doing some research. Can you put together a couple of pages, a proposal, and then usually you get that you get the funding. We also had a continuous funding from the industry groups. Basically, they had a so every year they contribute into this research, and then that research fund goes into the university and distributed among the faculty who are working on that specific field. So it wasn't too difficult to get funding while I was at Manitoba. And in terms of teaching, I developed this course on mathematical modeling of biological systems, and I was advising some PhD students, master student, and postdocs as well, and continue to also do oral presentations at national and international conferences. And so the research that I was doing there mostly focused on modeling, so quantification and evaluation of greenhouse gas emissions, also looking into the nutrient utilization and nutrient requirements models, particularly for dairy cattle, and then studying the environmental sustainability of livestock systems. And the source of funding mostly, I had the National Science and Engineering Research Council. So the way it works in Canada is that every new researcher has the opportunity to apply twice to a National Science and Engineering Research Council for like a base funding. So I was lucky enough to get awarded this, and basically this provides you, I think, about $50,000 a year for 5 years to kind of have a sort of an area where you want to go into. So it's pretty open kind of funding. So that was pretty good and helpful in terms of you're not forced into doing things that you don't want to do just because there is funding available. So in this case, they give you the funding so you can basically expand to areas that you think is going to be the future. And then from Minister of Agriculture, as I said, and industry groups in the province as well. And then 12 years ago, I arrived at UC Davis, and basically started working again, continued to put again a lot of work on publication. So most of the time, once I'm in Davis, I no longer am the sort of the first author, always as the last or the senior author. And at the beginning was trying to get some funding to be able to start the lab. And what helped me a lot was that as a Cessna Endowed Chair, you get some funding to, again, sort of to use it as you see fit. So I immediately hired a postdoc. Actually, the postdoc and I arrived about the same time at Davis, which then helped me to start my research right away. And then as the research is continuing, then I was able to focus on trying to get some funding. And then that funding then allowed me to hire students, and then more postdocs, so I expand the lab in that manner. And for teaching, the course that I was teaching in Manitoba, I adopted it and became part of the animal biology graduate group now. So every winter we give this course. I also developed a new course on sustainable animal agriculture, and then I put together a book on sustainable animal projects, so agriculture. I edited that book, and I reached out to a number of colleagues and put together that book, which we still use that and I give this course every year in the spring quarter. So far I've had about 10 PhD students and 4 masters and about 10 postdocs as well. And I've got a lot of people that sort of spend in the lab for like 2 to 3 months as well. And I continue to give conferences, presentations globally. So it has increased over the years. Usually now I would say maybe 10, 15 presentations a year, but with the pandemic, I think it's probably gone to about 25. The research at UC Davis, I kind of condensed it a little bit. I focused on, again, continuing the modeling that I was doing on the quantification and evaluation of mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions, and then nutrient utilization requirement of models in cattle. So basically looking at the greenhouse gases and then the requirements for cattle as well. And the funding is quite diverse. I've had federal funding from USDA. So the USDA has different arms. There's AFRI, there's NIFA, there's Foreign Agricultural Service, and then USAID also. And then from the state, I work a lot with the California Air Resources Board. And then we have a Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, and a lot of industry groups, particularly with the dairy groups. I work with the California Dairy Research Foundation, the Pork Board, and the National Cattlemen's Association, and then industry like multinational industries like DSM and Burger King and Nestle and Starbucks and all that kind of stuff. And then philanthropy has been actually pretty good as well. So we're getting gifts and mostly from philanthropic sources. Once they see what kind of work we're doing, they like the work, and then they come up with the funding. So 2 years ago, I was surprised by a philanthropic organization in San Francisco just basically saying an email saying, hello, we like the work that you're doing. We saw it on I don't know, San Francisco Chronicle or something, and we want to support it. And then they came in and they asked what kind of work we're doing. I told them, and then they came up and supported with some funding. So it's becoming more and more sort of important in terms of funding some of the research that I like to do, which is not funded through other means. There are things that I want to do that are kind of high risk but high return, and those kind of things are not really funded by a lot of this sort of traditional funding agencies. So just to let you know a little bit about what kind of research I do. You can think of biological research as having sort of 2 arms, experimentation and modeling. and modeling basically what I would call the in silico kind of research, and getting data and then utilizing that data. And experimentation, you can have in vivo experimentation, so using real animals, or in vitro, which is doing stuff in the lab. So my group, basically, we do an in vivo work and an in silico work. We're not set up for in vitro, but we collaborate very closely with a colleague who has an in vitro lab. So he set up an in vitro lab. So we work with that lab before we take it into either in vivo or in silico. So the way it should work really is you do whatever you want to investigate, you try it in silico first. So you have a model, you try to figure out in the model what is the likelihood of happening. And then you can do a little bit of in vitro work where you would test some of the hypotheses that come out from the silico, and then you basically ground truth it using in vivo experiments. So when I started here in Davis, probably say 90% in silico and 10% in vivo. And now I would say it's maybe 80% in vivo and 20% in silico. It's kind of switched, mainly because of the way that I see how I can, or my lab can contribute to solving this issue. Some examples, to give you some examples of the research that I'm doing in the area of quantification and evaluation of the mitigation options. We came up with prediction models for enteric methane emissions from cattle. So this was actually published in the Global Change Biology, and from here we moved to similar field where we are developing models not just for one region, but we developed it for different regions: North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, trying to figure out what are the best models to use when we're trying to predict enteric methane emissions. So the prediction then will help you in terms of coming up with the mitigation as well. And then this was sort of the not long ago, we put together a global database, so much bigger than we ever had before, and we worked with a lot of people and came up with some prediction equations for enteric methane production as well. So all of that work is actually informed the IPCC. So in 2016 or 17, I was asked to join the task force for the IPCC to update the recommendations. Until then, people used the 2006 IPCC guidelines. So it was already over 10 years by the time IPCC thought, well, now is the time to revise it. So I joined the team, and we were able to revise the recommendations of IPCC. And all these papers, these are just a small fraction of the papers that I'm showing you here. They all then helped inform this refinement. So in 2019, it was published as a refinement for the IPCC guidelines. So now over 130 countries around the world use those recommendations that we came up with to basically to calculate their national emissions and report to the United Nations. The other thing that we're doing is the nutrient requirement models in cattle. So we work a lot on trying to figure out, what is the requirement of, and what's the energy requirement, and in this case, what's the protein requirement of the animals, and if you have enzymes and additives, how does it change in terms of the efficiency and the use and the requirement of all these models as well. So we've done a lot of work on the requirements. Again, I'm showing you just 3 papers here, but we've done things on phosphorus requirement, on water requirement, and a number of things. And then all of this then informed into this new book that will be published next week. It took us 7 years to work on this. This is the latest edition of the nutrient requirements of dairy cattle, which will be published by the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. The previous one was published in 2001. It is the most cited book on animal nutrition. This is going to be the same thing as well. I think once the 8th revision comes out next week, you will see that it will start to be cited quite heavily as well. It's been over about 15 years in between the two, and so it's been anticipated quite a bit. But it took us quite a while because there's been a lot of advances that's happened to synthesize everything that's been happened in the last 15 years. Is quite a big challenge. But now, anyway, it's all done. I'm quite pleased that this is coming out, and from next week, people can start ordering the book. So now I kind of changed my focus from that, and really now I work really on one field, which is looking at feed additives to reduce methane emissions. So methane has become more and more important. I started working in methane like 20 years ago, but it has become really, really important now. A lot of the focus for livestock and any negative aspects of livestock is really to do with greenhouse gas emissions and with methane. And in the state, we have this legislation to reduce methane emissions by 40% by 2030. And now I'm sure you've seen from COP26 that there is a global methane pledge, and over 100 countries have signed up to it. So the last 5 years, really, I've been really working on methane emission issues, on feed additives. So we've been testing various feed additives and also doing some modeling of feed additives. So really, the work that I'm doing now is highly focused on feed additives. One of the things that we've done is we looked at seaweed as a way to reduce emissions, and that actually has really changed a lot of the things that I have been doing. So this is a comparison of control and cows that were supplemented with seaweed. As you can see, their methane emissions has declined significantly. So this really changed the whole thing that we were doing, and really how we are approaching it. And it also sort of struck a nerve on a lot of people. And once this was published, actually the impact was huge. So I was asked to appear on Science Friday podcast. I don't know if you listen to it every Friday. You can listen to it on NPR. So various programs on NPR. It was all over the world media, the Guardian or Der Spiegel in Germany, New York Times, and in Italy, La Repubblica. So all in all, the UC Davis Strategic Communications, they told me over 300 outlets reported on this. But I thought the biggest impact was on Reddit. And I didn't even know about Reddit until somebody told me, and it was the number one discussed topic on the day that it disappeared, and over 2,000 comments in just a few hours. So I was quite pleased to see that kind of impact. And I just want to show you this to see, what we do. So hopefully it works.
It's breakfast time at this dairy farm at the University of California, Davis. But this cattle feed contains an unusual ingredient, seaweed.
We mix it with molasses, so it's a nice little sweet treat for them. We try to mix it as well as we can into their feed. But we have some cows that'll pick it out, and we have some cows that'll go right for the seaweed.
If we don't need the seaweed, then we won't see any reduction in methane. UC Davis is testing whether seaweed can reduce emissions of methane, a potent greenhouse gas that's released when cattle burp, pass gas, or make manure. Dairy farms and other livestock operations are major sources of methane. That's why California is requiring them to cut emissions by 40% by 2030.
Reducing methane ultimately means reducing greenhouse gases and reducing the impact of climate change. So it affects everybody in the globe. This is a wild Atlantic kelp.
Before feeding seaweed to the cows, UC Davis researchers tested in this lab where they can measure emissions in fermenters that simulate cattle stomachs.
And we can test the effect of different feed additives
on the gut microbiology.
Here we have some milk samples.
They also test milk samples for flavor and nutritional value. The methane content of the cow's breath is measured when they stick their heads in these feeding machines. The first study of the seaweed diet only involved a dozen cows. The early results show promise, and larger studies are planned.
And so far, it's very encouraging. We've seen over 30% of reduction in methane emissions.
Around the world, dairy scientists are looking for ways to reduce cattle emissions by spicing up their diet. They've tried garlic, oregano, cinnamon, and even curry, with mixed results. At the University of Wisconsin, researchers are studying how a cow's breed, as well as what and how much they eat, affects their emissions, which they measure with this treat dispensing device.
The machine draws air from the breath of the cow, and the machine continuously measures the concentrations of the methane in the air. Really, what drives the emission from the cow is how much the cow eats. Because the more the cow is going to eat, the more she needs to process that feed, and the more methane she's going to produce.
Researchers hope seaweed and other food additives can help reduce emissions and make dairy farms more climate friendly. Terry Che, Associated Press, Davis, California.
Okay, so that's really the work that I'm doing to try to reduce methane emissions from high and middle income countries. But I also have another arm of this my program, which is focused on low-income countries. So in low-income countries, what we're trying to do is to improve production. So, for example, we developed a ration formulation software in French using local feed for Burkina Faso. I was actually, this is a picture taken about 3 weeks ago in Ouagadougou, where we went to train farm advisors and professors and others on the use of this software, so that they can use it to formulate diets for goats and sheep and try to improve the productivity of those animals. So this is during the training session, and this was funded by the USAID as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We're doing similar work in Ethiopia. So what we do in Ethiopia, again, we developed a ration formulation software, but it's for dairy cattle, and it was done in Amharic. So that Amharic is the national language of Ethiopia. So we're trying to get as many people to use it, and all the information, all the feed, everything else that's available here is also, we got it from researchers in Ethiopia as well. So it's very much for local consumption, and the requirement for the cattle is also for the local cattle. And we've done some similar things in Vietnam. And so in Vietnam, we actually done it in beef cattle and dairy cattle as well. We have collected some samples from different parts of Vietnam, analyzed them, and put them into the software. And again, we went to Vietnam 3-4 times now, and we provided training. I think maybe about 200 people have been trained. And the professors at the universities also got trained on this, and now they are exposing about 300 students a year on training of this software. So the sustainability of the software is assured, because now the professors are basically is part of the curriculum, and they teach them with this. It's in Vietnamese, so it's much easier for them to use it, to teach students, as well as when they are graduating, they will be going on to join an industry or go to a Ministry of Agriculture and all that, and so that they can continue to use this software as well. So we hope to kind of continually improve. We do have one project at the moment to convert this software to make it into a mobile app. So once that's out, then we will again go back to Vietnam, hopefully in the summer, and do the same kind of training on how to use this software on a mobile app. So this work is actually funded by USDA Foreign Agricultural Service. And then we are expanding this work. At the moment, we have a new project that we were working on this in Cambodia, in Khmer language, in Laos, in Laos, and then in Nigeria as well. So this work is ongoing at the moment. So now sort of kind of move you from the research-centric kind of thing into more of the leadership activity. So in 2016, I sort of realized that I enjoyed working with different people and visiting different countries, and so I thought maybe I could contribute in making some alliances and making research happen and help other faculty do that as well. So I joined Global Affairs as an associate vice provost, and so I in that role I traveled around the world and trying to have relationships established with our partners all over the world. And then about three years ago in 2019, there was a new position opened up as an associate dean in the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. So which I thought was more relevant to me than the global affairs. So in the global affairs, I was basically looking at the whole university, sort of how to get people to work together for the whole university. But I thought I could do better if I'm focused more on the college. So that's why I moved from being associate vice provost for global affairs to associate dean in the College of Agriculture and Environmental Science. And then sort of if you look nationally, also very much involved in the National Academies of Science, Engineering and Medicine. I joined the board on agriculture and natural resources for that institution. And then I served as a member of the committee for the nutrient requirement of dairy cattle, as well as for another study, which was to improve the characterization of anthropogenic methane emissions in the US. Both of them were supported by the National Academies of Science, Engineering and Medicine. And sort of internationally also, I've been working with the UN Food Agriculture Organization, mostly chairing a couple of committees, one on methane, which is ongoing right now, and then another one on feed additives that we published a few years ago. Also work as advisor to the CGI-IAR system. When they are doing some proposals, then we go through the proposals and select the ones that have the highest potential for funding and for impact, and then continue to be involved in a lot of the conferences. These days, mostly as organizer. So right now, I'm part of the scientific committee for the greenhouse gas in animal agriculture, as well as for the international modeling consortium that happen every 3 years, and then another conference also on herbivores, and then one focused on low-income countries as well. So mostly on the scientific committee, trying to kind of drive and help mostly, make sure that there is a diversity in the presentations and sort of promote younger or early career people to have a chance to present their work in those conferences as well. And so the highlight of the year for sure is being invited to give a TED Talk. In October this year, I went to Edinburgh, where there was a TED, it's what they call a countdown. So it was mostly focused. This is actually the first time the TED Talk was put together and focused in just one subject, which is climate change. Most of the other TED Talks, it's a combination of different type of the topics. But on this conference, on this summit, they put together just the climate change from various aspects of climate change. And it was I mean, I was completely blown away. The way they organized this is just amazing. I've never seen any kind of conference being organized like this. Everything from your slides, they have professionals to do the slides, and the training how to deliver a talk, and how to stand and what to do with your hands. Everything else, it was taken into consideration. So it was a fantastic experience. It hasn't come out yet. They're still doing some editing. They told me that it will come out in the new year. Hopefully, maybe January or February, it will be released. So I'm looking forward to that. But the experience in Edinburgh was amazing. So just finally, some of the group members. So the older gentleman you see here is a professor from Michigan State. So he came to do his sabbatical here at Davis, and to learn. Actually, he wanted to come in and learn about the sustainable animal agriculture course that I developed, and then he went back to Michigan and he put together a course on sustainable animal agriculture before he retired last year or so. And then a lot of these people actually are in different places. A lot of them are professors in different universities around the world. And we also have fun in the group before the pandemic. Obviously, this is before the pandemic, where we go out and have fun, and we also used to get together at my house once a year or so, twice a year, and have fun as well. Just to end this presentation, so we have some time for questions. All of this work has been supported by so many different types of funders, some traditional funding agencies, some very much non-traditional. So you really never know when opportunity comes up for funding. So this is it. Thank you for your attention, and open for questions now.
Dr. Kebreab, thank you so much for sharing your work, and this is truly inspiring, and sharing your career path over the years, and this is really remarkable. So fortunately, we have some time for questions, and we already have a couple of questions in the chat. I think the first question is from Stephen. So he wanted to ask you about some of the challenges you may have faced in terms of publications, like in peer-reviewed journals. And then the other question is if you have advice on academic career journey that you think young investigators should avoid going forward. So those are two-part questions.
Yeah, so in terms of the publication, I guess there has been a bit of a challenge when you are getting into a new field. Like with the modeling, for example, in animal sciences was a bit of a challenge, because normally, those journals are used to having very set kind of like a template. So you have the introduction, materials and methods, and results and discussion and conclusion. But with the modeling, you can't do that. You have to have the model of the development and sensitivity analysis and this and that. So it's a different kind of thing, and it was a challenge to get people to move away from the traditional kind of template into this arena. But just persistence would really help. And one thing I would say to avoid in peer review when you're publishing is the predatory journals. There are so many predatory journals now that as long as you just send them, you pay a fee, they will publish it like the next day with no corrections, and those kind of things. It's not going to help your career. Actually, it will harm your career. And when people apply to jobs and then you look at their publication record and then you see that a lot of the publications are in predatory journals, then obviously you're not going to take them seriously. So I think you have to really avoid those predatory journals. Make sure that I personally, for example, do not publish any of the MDPI journals. I know some of them are okay, but it's just a very aggressive way of promoting those the journals. So, and as much as possible, I try to publish in society-led journals. So those ones are mostly for not for profit, or at least it helps the society in some way. But those predatory journals, they're just in it for the money. So I think avoiding that would be important. I think knowing which ones are legitimate and which ones are predatory, so that you can avoid that. In terms of so share experience in engaging with low middle income countries. Yeah, so I think I guess the one of the reasons that I wanted to work in low and middle income countries is that's where I originated from. So I think kind of a giving back a little bit to those countries. And I genuinely feel that there is a lot of potential for us to help as well. Looking at sort of environmental things, for example, the biggest change you can make is really in low-income countries. I mean, we can increase productivity here in the US probably about 2% or so a year, but in low-income countries, that could go up to 30-40% a year. So we can really make a big difference working in that. There's a challenge. It's much more challenging working in those countries because of infrastructure and a number of other things that come into it. But I think that shouldn't be that shouldn't stop us from trying to work there.
Great. Well, thank you for your comments. And so we have a hand from our colleague, Scola. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Kebreab, for such an inspirational talk. It's been quite a journey. So thank you for mapping that out for us from the beginning to where you are. I'm just curious about, the innovative way of disseminating research. I don't know if it was a deliberate on your part, or you've been sought out given the amazing work you've done, but especially for a young novice researcher trying to find strategic ways not only of funding our research. What would you say about for example, looking at social media or traditional media or other platforms of presenting or disseminating your work, especially to target not only funding, but also to, really increase awareness around your research focus? What would be your advice? What are some of the challenges that you may have found? Because there's some who may think maybe it's not as appropriate to disseminate research, or it might not be as rigorous to do it through other means outside of journals. So what would be your advice?
Yeah, so I think the way that we communicate science has really changed quite a bit since when I started. When I started, mostly as long as you publish in a scientific journal, then that's it. That's really the part of the dissemination. But really, things have changed quite a bit. And trying to engage with the general public, now there are different ways of doing that. So social media is definitely one of them. I was a little bit skeptical to begin with, but I think now I see that it has a lot of value. So I've started doing Twitter, I don't know, a few years ago now. And at the beginning, I wasn't really very keen, but now I think I see the huge value of being able to engage and disseminate the work. And I think part of the reason that I was invited to give a TED Talk is because of this engagement with the public on Twitter and other medium. And a lot of the journalists also, they are very much on those platforms. And so they will then seek you out and they see like, oh, this sounds interesting. And then you get to talk with them, and then once you start talking with one journalist, and another journalist picks it up, and then it just becomes like a domino effect. And then you start giving interviews twice a week. So it's really has changed. I think just publishing is not going to be enough to really be able to communicate in what you do. So social media is very important, and also those conferences, being able to go right now. Obviously, a lot of conferences are not in person, but still even online. It's an incredibly important way to communicate science and to talk with people. And as I mentioned, most of the jobs that I have had really came through networking. So through the networks, through going to those conferences and talking to people in those conferences. And I've hired people from going conferences as well. I remember when the first postdoc I hired here at Davis, I saw him present in a papers in a conference, and right away I just offered him a job on the spot, because I knew what he could do, and then luckily he came in and joined my lab. So there are non-traditional ways of communicating science. There are some some platforms. I mean, people use like even Facebook and others for science, but yeah, it's just so many different ways nowadays available to us and be able to communicate with the public.
Has some of that generous funding that you've obtained, especially from philanthropists, be through the social media, or have you often sought that out?
Well, so the philanthropic ones, I haven't really sorted out as much as I should, but luckily I was working with a colleague who was very much aware of those things, so she was able to contact those philanthropic sources and was able to get the funding. So all of the seaweed stuff that I have done is all through philanthropic sources. But maybe there was a little bit from FFAR, like about 50,000, but that's not much. But most of it was from philanthropic sources. And then once they see how things are happening, how it's been reported and how it benefits, then other philanthropic organizations would want to join as well. And usually they would ask, you have a kind of one organization that's committed, and then other organizations will come into it as well. So working with philanthropic organizations, approaching them, because it doesn't really take too much time. They don't require this extensive amount of information that you would have to do for a federal granting agency. It's basically you want to share ideas, and then if they like the idea, then they will ask you to expand on it or something like that, and then you go from there. And there are so many philanthropic organizations that people don't know, and it doesn't have to be those that are focused on one subject. So it doesn't have to be like the Bill and Gates, the Gates Foundation or things like that. There are much smaller ones that would support 50,000, 100,000 kind of thing, where that's what they do. This organization I was telling you about that came to me and offered me support is a small organization based in San Francisco, and the manager was telling me that they have to give out this money, and he said if you don't give up the money, then he said I will go to jail. That's the purpose. Once they set up this funding opportunities, they just want to make sure that they're giving it to what they feel is the right cause, but they have to give this money out. And so I think it's just a matter of making yourself, just learning how to package it in a way that they will find it interesting.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So I think we have just a few more minutes. Any other questions for Dr. Kebreab? Just making sure that I didn't miss anything in the chat. All right. Well, again, thank you very much for sharing your time with us today. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure our colleagues also appreciated your talk, and really looking forward to hearing your TED Talk once it comes out. Please keep us posted, and really excited to view it.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. This has been great.